And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Tuesday, May 20th. I am Josh Engelman. I'm joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We're here for the Western Conference Finals, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're going to break it down over the next 30 minutes. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Greg, are you excited for new basketball?
I am. We've got a different series here. I'm looking forward to both of them in different ways. A little bit more excited for Knicks Pacers just because I think it's more likely to be the more competitive series. Not that this one can't be competitive, just I would be very surprised if Knicks Pacers isn't competitive, and this one may or may not be competitive, kind of like TBD.
I kind of see it that way too. I think Knicks Pacers is a real wild card. I don't have a great feel for it. I think those games are going to be pretty fun. A lot of history, which is also fun. This one, I just kind of think OKC gets it done. And we're going to talk about it now. We might as well just dive right in. We just got the Wolves starting lineup. Spoiler alert, it's the same one they've had the whole year. It never changes. Well, I guess it did change for a little bit. They benched Conley for like a month. And then on the OKC side, we are really waiting for that starting lineup. They could change something here. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think they're going to, but not out of the realm of possibility. New series, you never know. They have the bodies to do it. Do you think they're changing anything? Never mind. They didn't change anything. You don't even have to tell me.
I'm going to confidently answer, I don't think they change anything now. My answer, whatever I was going to answer before, doesn't matter. I was going to say that I don't think they change anything, but it doesn't matter because there's no reason to believe me. I already have the answer. I can make myself look better in hindsight. The more important question, I think, though, is who is OKC going to close with and who plays the most minutes outside of SGA. His minutes are pretty locked in. Jalen Williams, his minutes are pretty locked in. Chet's minutes are pretty locked in. And then Hartenstein and Dort, their minutes, like, to an extent are secure, but not in the same way as the other guys because they could close with Caruso. Caruso was probably the third best player in the last series with Jalen Williams playing really well, SGA playing really well. And then, I mean, Caruso in the final game of the series, he was the primary defender on Nikola Jokic and ended up doing a really good job. Now, one of the main reasons that he was able to do a really good job is that Denver just didn't have the point guard play to be able to get him the ball. But there was another part of it too, where he legitimately played really well. And when they made that trade for Alex Caruso, like who would have thought that the end scenario, there would be Alex Caruso be the primary defender on Nikola Jokic in a game 7. But the point that I'm getting at here is it wouldn't be shocking at all if Caruso closes over Dort or Hartenstein.
Do you think that Giddey would have been able to handle that Jokic assignment?
No, I mean, it would have been the same as last year where he's just like not playing in the playoffs really, but
he'd have been getting somebody else a drink. Trey Jordan says not playing Chet. He's going to get abused by Randall. Maybe he just won't guard Randall then. You just change the matchup. That's what I would do.
By the way, we just got a projections update.
Bang. So projections just hit, which means we should see ownership in the next minute or so. We can start talking about what this slate actually is. I think it's more interesting to talk about the OKC side than it is the Minnesota side. Minnesota's going to play the same 8 guys they normally play. Some might play a little bit more or less in a new series. But OKC, that's where I think you have to get into your feels about what you think this series is going to be. Is it Isaiah Joe? Is it Jalen Williams with a Y? Is it Cason Wallace in this series? I don't know. Is it just Caruso again at 5,400? There's pay down options on OKC. I find this one interesting. What do you want to do here with OKC?
Sure. So one thing, at least on the DraftKings side with Caruso, is he's been priced up at least a little bit here. You know, he's $4,800 in the flex spot. So it's not like he's the easiest guy to get to from a value sense or anything like that. And he still has to do a little bit of something when he gets on the court. I think it's the value we're going to find on this slate. It's Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, and Alex Caruso. Like, I think we have to balance those 3 guys and try to figure out relative to their salaries who is going to have the best chance to succeed, because we're going to want to play SGA and we're going to want to play Anthony Edwards in a lot of these games, I assume. And in order to do that, we're going to have to find who are some of the cheaper guys we want to get to. And I'm going to rerun lineups for the most recent data update. But my feeling is that while Alex Caruso is still in play, I think I'm going to want to go to the most inexpensive guys, just because that's going to make it easiest for me to get to the top guys. Like, I don't know exactly what the rotations are going to look like for OKC. And with that kind of in doubt for me, just give me the cheapest guys to open up the series.
Yeah, the Isaiah Joe at 5% ownership, Jalen Williams at 1% ownership guys. That's just like, I don't mean our ownership is not correct, but like if that's what's about to happen, that's not correct. Like one of those two guys could play 20 minutes today, and that would not surprise me in the slightest. So I'm very intrigued by what I get out of those guys. If I need to massage the player pool a little bit to get a little bit more of those guys, because I couldn't agree more. Those guys are fascinating to me. Not that I don't like Alex Caruso at 4,800. Like I'm sure I'm going to have some of him. Those guys are getting underrepresented unless this changes pretty dramatically.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some viable.
It didn't change dramatically. Ownership just hit 5% Joe, 0.7 Jalen Williams.
All right, so that could be even lower on Jalen Williams than where he was at before. I don't think this is as good of a series for Jalen Williams to play bigger minutes, because last series, at least there was a need to get more size on the court to match up with Jokic. I just, as good as Gobert is on defense, like there's no need to do anything to game plan for him on offense. Like I think that Chet is probably going to be on Gobert just so he can kind of be like a roamer and play free safety and be more available to help on the weak side or just to contest more shots in general. So my intuition is that this isn't going to be a Jalen Williams series, but you never know until the games actually play out.
There is no defense in the NBA per Guitar Z-Man. Is that a real statement? That's insane. That's insane. I kind of like Jalen Williams in this series. I'm going to push back there, though. I would not be surprised at all to see him pick up a little bit of extra time, especially if this becomes more of a Naz Reid series than a Gobert series. That might not be a today thing, but that might be a future thing. I don't know if it'll help me as much in game one, but I think this could be a spot where we actually do see potentially a little bit more of Jalen Williams over Hartenstein. Not necessarily like over Hartenstein, like they're going to swap minutes or anything, but just changes the shape a little bit of the team when Minnesota's running a little smaller.
Yeah, I thought last series I was pretty high on it being a Hartenstein series. I don't think this one is a Hartenstein series. So last series I was really trying to jam Hartenstein in the earlier going of some of those matchups. I feel the opposite about it. If they put Naz Reid on the court, which I also think is more apt to happen just because of the fact that this is a 7.5 point spread. What are we expecting to happen in the later stages of the game? We're expecting the Timberwolves to be playing from behind. What do the Timberwolves have to do when they're playing from behind? They have to get more offense on the court, more three-point shooting. That's Naz Reid. And then when Naz Reid comes on the court, I think we're more apt to see the lineups with Chet at center and then either like Cason Wallace or Alex Caruso on the court as opposed to Hartenstein. So I don't think this is really a Hartenstein series.
Super chat from Sean Jeezy. Good evening, gents. Can you guys talk through Gobert here? More minutes because of double big OKC, or do you think Gobert and Hartenstein both see depressed minutes and it goes small-ish? I think it all comes down to how much offense they create when Rudy Gobert's on the floor. If they can't create anything because OKC's defense is locking them down, that's the first thing they're going to pull out of there. And Gobert is going to sit, and that's going to turn into something else, a guard or Naz Reid in that instance. But I think that's the path, really. How do you see it?
Yeah, kind of what I said before. I just think we're more apt to see OKC leading by 10 or so points in the later stages of games. And then just by force, you're going to have to see more offense on the court for Minnesota. If the game's competitive, then I think it's Gobert on the court. I just don't think that's what the most likely scenario is. It could certainly happen where the game is, a 2-3 point game, but I think it's more likely that, they're down like 3-4 possessions in the fourth quarter.
I think we're seeing it the same way. Do you have a preference between Shea and Ant on FanDuel or DraftKings? It's basically, or at least earlier today, it was basically the same. I'm going to assume that it's still basically, it's a little more narrow. 27 to Shea at the captain, 16 to Ant at the captain on the DraftKings side. It's 30 and 13 on the FanDuel end. Do you have a preference between those two guys today?
Yeah, so I have a preference in terms of fantasy projection, and then I'll let you know in terms of my ownership after this. And by the way, I mean like fantasy projection relative to like what their salaries are. I think it's pretty easy to say, I think SGA scores more fantasy points than Anthony Edwards. But beyond that, even relative to salary, I prefer SGA to Anthony Edwards. And the main reason for me is just, I know we just were like, hey, somebody, Guitar Z-Man, said there's no defense in the NBA. Well, these are two of the best defensive teams in the NBA, and particularly OKC. I mean, we just saw what they did to Jamal Murray in Game 7 and Russell Westbrook. I mean, Russell Westbrook kind of beat himself at times, but Jamal Murray wasn't able to do shit in Game 7. No. And Russell Westbrook also wasn't able to do shit in Game 7. It's like one of the worst point guard plays I've ever seen in an individual game, especially in an elimination playoff game. And a lot of that has to do with they've got guys like Lou Dort, Alex Caruso. SGA is also a really good defender they could throw at some of these top guards. Minnesota has a really good defense, but SGA still has a much easier matchup than what Anthony Edwards has. Edwards has the most difficult matchup he could possibly have with the bodies they could throw at him.
I hate it for him. I hate it. But the crazy thing to me, like I'm trying to think pie in the sky, like if Minnesota does win this series, this ends up looking like some ridiculous coming out party for Anthony Edwards, just like knifing his way through all of these incredible wing defenders on the Thunder. I just can't see that happening. Like, I think he's too young for it, so to speak. I think this is going to be an immense learning experience for him, as they try to go game by game, cracking whatever code this is. I think this makes I said this on the strategy show. I think this makes 2027 Anthony Edwards significantly better by having to like run through OKC here. I just don't think it's going to go well today. Like this series, one day, like one of the games, he's just like everything's going to fall and he's going to have 30 something and it'll work. But he's going to get really bad looks every single game, all the time.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough matchups for him. I mean, to be clear, he is the second highest projected player on the slate, and definitely for good reason. By the way, I'm happy. I always like when this happens. When you have an intuition on something and then you run the Sims and it just gives you what you think you want to have. I have so much more of SGA than I have of Anthony Edwards, so I'm cool with that.
Nice. I'm about to start mine right now. I did have that earlier today. I'm hoping that's the case when I get to it, but we shall see.
Yeah, I have 44% of Anthony Edwards in total across the captain and the flex spot. So underweight to the field on him. More so underweight in the captain spot. He's pulling 16% captain ownership. I have 6% of him in my top lineups. But on the flip side, I've got nearly 90% of SGA. So like I've got like twice as much of SGA as I have relative to Ant. So SGA for me in terms of what my opinion is on who should play better based on the matchup, but then also what the data is showing me when I run everything through our Sims.
Are you guys waiting until after both game ones to kind of go over the 2-day games? I will never go over the 2-day games. It's going to be pretty much showdown specific.
Yeah, we have the 2-day. Yeah, we have it covered in our projections and in our Sims, but it is definitely a little hard to cover a game a day in advance, not knowing all like the most pertinent information and whatnot. It will get pretty easy, I guess, as you get a little bit later on to know what's going to happen in some of the upcoming games. But yeah, we'll be focusing more on Showdown.
Yeah, I wish those slates were more interesting. But I don't like the 2-dayers. They don't seem to be the thing. Do you like anything from Minnesota here, like in your mind, and it's happening in your exposures? Like, do you think this? I mean, I find it so difficult for everybody from Minnesota that I somehow hate them all. Do you not hate anybody? I guess.
So of my 6 most rostered players in this game, 5 of them are from OKC. The one guy from Minnesota who's in my 6 most rostered players, it is Julius Randle. I have 8% of him in the captain spot, 44% of him in the flex. So he is the player I have the most exposure to from Minnesota. He's in about half my lineups. A little bit overweight to the field on Randle, but not like any kind of real massive stand. What I think makes more sense if you're actually going to take shots on some of the Minnesota guys, it's some of the little bit cheaper guys or some of the more contrarian options. So relative to ownership, here's a couple of guys who stand out to me. Okay. Like I said, I like Randle, but I'm not like way different in the field or anything. Here are a couple of guys I like relative to price and or ownership. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. One thing that we've seen from this is, we don't talk about narratives too much, but we have actually seen Minnesota do this when they play against OKC. They like to play Nickeil Alexander-Walker against SGA. Sure. They are cousins. They don't just have the same last name. Like, they are familiar with each other. They grew up together. They played basketball against each other. Chris Finch has said in press conferences that he likes to play Nickeil Alexander-Walker against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because they're familiar with each other. And he thinks that gives him a little bit of an advantage trying to guard him. You've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, $2,800. He's my favorite value option from Minnesota. And, you know, at $2,800, it's not like it's a massive opportunity cost, but I just like the chance, even if he gets 3 or 4 extra minutes, 2 extra minutes, that means a lot on a 1-game slate. So I think there's an angle there for that to happen. And I think these are the spots you kind of look for on a game 1 of the series, where how could the rotation potentially be a little bit different than what it was in the regular season? And that's the way you could maybe get yourself a little bit of an advantage for game 1. The other one's the guy who I mentioned at the top of the show. I think this could be a Naz Reid series if they're looking to get more shooting on the court. And it's pretty hard to find decent players that are contrarian on 1-game slates. And Naz Reid being 19% owned, there's a scenario here where Naz Reid plays most of the fourth quarter, closes the game, and then he's like 38% owned at the same salary in the next game. So I like taking shots on Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Well, my 3 highest leverage plays at the flex are Isaiah Joe, who we sort of touched on before, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So good work there. On the opposite end of that one, the biggest negative leverage play for me is Aaron Wiggins. I think that fits pretty well. He was a guy that they called on a little bit towards the end of that series. New series, doesn't have to be him. Totally happy to get to a little bit more of some of these other guys. Nothing else in my flex exposure is all that interesting. The big takeaway for me coming out of the captain spot is I'm just getting to more of Shai. I'm well over the field on Shai. I think a lot of it has to do with just the fact that there's so many different random cheap value dudes today that salary's not all that necessary. I'm going to assume I have some like really low salary lineups. Nothing too crazy. 1,400 is the most that I left. I thought it might have been a little bit more extreme. And then it's Chet, actually, who I don't know what to make of in this series. I think it's going to be fantastic for him. I think he's going to have the opportunities for a lot of like really big defensive stat days, and it's just going to come down to how the 3 ball's falling. But I think he's just going to, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the show. I think he's going to roam free a little bit more here than he had the opportunity to do before, because you start roaming against Denver and Jokic is just going to find wherever that space is, and that guy's going to end up with the ball. They don't have that. So go Chet. I'm 2xing Chet in the captain spot. Is my other option there. Do you have a Chet take?
Let's see. I'm pretty neutral to Chet, so not really like a strong take there or anything like that. Just a guy on the slate who exists to me. I've got him in 36% of lineups in the flex. We got him projected for 34% ownership in the flex. I've got 7% captain ownership. We got him projected for 7% ownership there. So not really. I have so much of SGA in the captain, nearly half of my lineups of him in the captain. It precludes me from making anybody else a priority there. I've got a little bit of Jalen Williams, but so does the field. And those are the only 2 guys I have double-digit exposure to as captain options. If you got one guy who's in about half your lineups as the captain, it's just kind of hard to get overweight to anybody else. My stands are more so some of those cheap guys, or like a Naz Reid who's really contrarian at the flex.
Before we go any further, got to take the time to just say this, because it's huge. and it's on the screen right now. We had a Millie winner in golf this past weekend. Shout out to Dr. Rex Goodfellow with the Millie. 528 and 50. Beats by a point. We're at the top. And we don't run a ton of all access promos all that frequently. But when we have Millie winners, which happened over and over again during the NFL season, we like to give back during those times and set up a good deal. And this is what I think is a really great deal. Buy 2 months, get one free. This is going to cover your summer, everybody. Baseball, MMA, golf. If you want to try to hunt down a Millie, that's going to be out there for you guys. We're still finishing up the NBA. We're still finishing up hockey. You can see it on the screen. Don't forget NASCAR exists. Use the promo code PGA Millie. One big word, MILLY. Link in the description. Buy 2 months, get one free. Think about it like this. 33% off the next 3 months. Cover your summer. It's the summer of DFS, everybody. Love it. Shout out to the doc for picking up the mill.
It's more of a doctor than the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks is.
Good story, Glenn. What are we missing here? Do we want to talk about this a little bit on the FanDuel side? Because the value on FanDuel ends up looking a little bit different. Like there's not even any representation to Isaiah Joe or Jalen Williams, both sub 1%. Even someone like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Aaron Wiggins still coming in, relatively speaking, a bit lower here. How are you approaching this one? Because I'm going to assume you love Naz Reid at 4,400, but what, like, I mean, he's like $2,000 too cheap, isn't he?
If I like him at $6,400, I sure should like him at $4,400 on FanDuel. So he actually shows up as my most rostered flex option. The player I get the most of overall in the game, it's SGA. SGA shows up in just about everything over on the FanDuel side of things, but it's also so much. I mean, it's already easy. I already got him in almost 90% of lineups on DraftKings. FanDuel is in 98% of my lineups. And a big reason why is because you got Naz Reid at $4,400. And Naz Reid also at $4,400, despite being 37% owned, he's under-owned. He should be way more popular, in my opinion, than 37% at $4,400. And we saw this in some of the other previous games on FanDuel as well, where they just have these role players who have prominent roles that are like $1,500 to $2,000 too expensive. And they're just super easy to get to. And then it makes it really easy to pay up for the top end guys. And then as a result, like, why do you even need to take a shot on Isaiah Joe? Like, you need him to basically outscore Naz Reid. Yeah. And it's possible. It's just not all that likely. So it becomes a lower priority. But same, even like Mike Conley's $3,400 over on FanDuel. That's also a crazy cheap price tag. So FanDuel, it is, you could easily build lineups on FanDuel with SGA and Anthony Edwards, and it's not really an issue.
No, $4,400 for Naz Reid is a pretty wild price tag. He's only $200 more expensive than Case and Wallace, and they are very different in terms of, honestly, minutes and or minutes potential at least, and per minute rates. So I don't know. Looks awesome.
Yep. I don't really have anything else to. If I I said before, if I think he's playable and I like him a lot at $2,000 more expensive on DraftKings, how am I not going to like him at the 4,400 tag on FanDuel?
I have 30% of them in the flex on DraftKings. I have 88. Nope. I have 84 of Shea. That's my most exposed guy. Yeah,
my most easily. Like I said, it's 52% in the MVP spot on FanDuel for SGA for me, 46% in the flex spot. By the way, also, we got a question in Discord from Kraken Tiles. He wants to know how much salary should he set as his filter to leave on the table to avoid the masses for Showdown. He said he set FanDuel to 49.5. So I actually think it's a little bit less important now than it used to be on FanDuel. Like, I kind of let the Sims do their thing because they're going to project which lineups are most duped and how they're going to rate out. With the old structure on FanDuel, where especially for football, where there was no multiple multiplier spots, if you played a relatively decent capped or MVP guy in the old format, you were just locked to be duped tons of times if you used all the salary. It's less of an issue now that there's so many more different lineup combinations with the MVP changing salaries. So Kraken Tiles, the Sims already take dupes into account. I don't think that you have to go out of your way to make sure that you're leaving a certain amount of salary on the table.
No. And it depends who your captain is too. Like, it'll look a little bit different depending on having a high dollar captain or a low dollar captain, along with what you're filtering your lineup to. So turn both of those dials a little bit, have a non-traditional captain. You don't have to give up as much salary, but I wouldn't sweat it too much. Unless you're really going for, a guaranteed zero duper, but
it's tough to do that. The other thing too, you'll find where I've fallen into this as well with showdowns, where I'll go out of my way and say, like, I need to make contrarian lineups. And then you find out you're duped anyway. And it's like, fuck, I just built shitty lineups and they're duped. I might as well have built the better lineups and had them duped.
Let's see. Do we have any other super chats that came in? No. I am going to click this show comments on stage and see how it looks when the chat shows up for future reference for me. Okay, so useless. Cool. That's what I figured it was going to be.
Yeah, so I prefer us if we just select the individual ones to put on screen. Yeah. The problem with the scroll, like it's cool in concept, but bad in practice, because what ends up happening is, it's like covered up by what's on screen. You can't.
It's not, the text wasn't big enough. Langston says nuke. You got a nuke for today?
I do. Although it's Nas Reed. I don't have more guys other than when it's full slates. I'll be like, hey, I've got this group of players I like, and the ones that I talk about over the course of the show, maybe one I haven't brought up yet, he'll be who I end up going to for the nuke when we get there. The problem with these showdown slates is you kind of like you run out of guys to talk about. Yeah. So the answer is Nas Reed for me, though. It's
impossible to hold your nuke till the end. Like it's coming out early. It's like any one of my performances. Shea is the guy that I'm most over the field on in a spot, which would be the captain spot. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker is the guy that I have the highest positive leverage on.
Okay.
I have 33%. He's 23% owned. I also have 15% of a projected 5% owned Isaiah Joe. But I'm going to go Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That's the guy that I need to nuke the most. So he is my nuke.
I dig it.
Alexander Walker on Gilgeous Alexander. That's what I need.
Yeah, I mentioned he's one of the guys that I like for cheap to differentiate a lineup. I know if you're going crazy contrarian, you'd brought up Isaiah Joe as a potential guy. He's pulling like 5% ownership or something like that. But for me, I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Made a case for him before. We are in agreement there.
Don't forget, everybody, playback.tv/Stokastic. I'm going to drop the link into chat right now. The game will be on. Watch it. Subscribe if you want to. There are VIP passes we can hand out, but if you subscribe, you watch the games for the rest of the playoffs and get a 50% off promo code for a month of whichever single sport sim you want at Stokastic. I'm going to pop in the second half if this game is competitive. I have said that for the past 2 games. That has not been able to happen. So if we have a competitive game in the second half, I'm going to be around. Watch the second half with you guys, or at the very least, the fourth quarter. I'm not expecting competitive. At least not in like the I should put this back on type of game. I like OKC in this one. I think they cover. Where are you landed on this one from feel, Greg?
From a feel standpoint, like I have to pick OKC to win. It's the for sure more likely team to win, but pretty wide spread. It's bounced around. The spread was 7.5. It actually got bet to 6.5. Now it's moved back to 7. Game 1, I'll say it stays more competitive and Minnesota covers, but it's a wide spread. I don't have a great feel for it.
Alrighty. That is lock in 3, 2, 1. Basketball is here, everybody. Playback.tv/Stokastic. The link is in chat. And don't forget, if you want to sign up at Stokastic, you guys can do it very easily by clicking the link in the description using the promo code PGA Millie. One big word. Buy 2 months. Get one free. Shout out to Dr. Rex Goodfellow. Greg, anything else?
No, that'll do it for us, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Good luck tonight. Go Hurricanes.
Go Hurricanes. What's going on in Hurricane style?
Just started. It is currently 0-0, but Florida is on the power play. We are midway through the first period.
What's the series?
It's game 1. This is the Eastern Conference Finals. Game 1 today.
Okay. Good to know. Had no idea. Good to know. Go Canes. Go Canes. Good luck, everybody. Go Nikhil Alexander Walker and Isaiah Joe. We'll talk to you later. See you in playback.